The biblical passage chosen for the week of prayer for Christian unity in 2009, which is also crosses the week of prayer for reconciliation in this country, is from Ezekiel 37, and it's interesting because it's a very big, important passage about reconciliation. The Korean Christians have looked at this, and obviously that's very important to them in terms of the continuing divisions in Korea, but I think it's probably very well worth reflecting on from the point of view of Australia. And it says this: "The word of the Lord came to me, mortal, take a stick and write on it, for Judah and the Israelites associated with it. Then take another stick and write on it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel associated with it. And join them together into one stick, so that they may become one in your hand. And when your people say to you, 'Will you not show us what you mean by these?' say to them, 'Thus says the Lord God, I am about to take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel associated with it, and I will put the stick of Judah upon it, and make them one stick, in order that they may be one in my hand. And when the sticks on which you write are in your hand before their eyes, then say to them, Thus says the Lord God, I will take the people of Israel from the nations among which they have gone, and will gather them from every quarter, and bring them to their own land. I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king over them all. Never again shall there be two nations, and never again shall they be divided into two kingdoms."
There's a whole question about unity there, about coming from different perspectives, different standpoints, and bringing them under one. That doesn't mean uniformity, though.
No, I was going to say, I get a few alarm bells when you read things like one nation, because that has a bit of a powerful ring in Australia of something which is not particularly about reconciliation, I think.
But I think it's about at least having common focus. Like with all the 200 different tribal groups within Australia, there is at least, if you notice during this, 60s, 70s and 80s especially, the whole land rights movement, that unity in land, that brought a lot of groups of different diverse backgrounds, from salt water to fresh water to rainforest to desert type people, under one banner to fight about this, their understanding. And I think that can be true.
Is that a common cause or a common vision, or what's that about? Well,
I think it's a common understanding that all groups have about their closeness and connectedness to the land.
Yeah.
And it should be with everyone. It's not just any land, just by mine. It's across your land.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, phrases that do pop out there, in terms of bring them into their own land. That's not the same as
that's right.
Any old land.
That's right. It's an individual's type land, individual person's understanding of that particular place. Like for me, who lives in Sydney at the present time, as I've often said, I'm a foreigner in that place because that's not my land. But I do have an understanding of land in the sense if they were talking about their land, then I'd refer that back to my land, which is in North Coast New South Wales.
So you can be in unity, you can be in one. You can have one Australia, but it has to reflect the diversity.
Oh, you can, and I think that's one of our problems at the moment, is that we don't like diversity. We talk about uniformity, we don't talk about unity in that sense, where everyone's got to be the same. And I think there is a long history that we really haven't addressed this area of racism within Australia, and it's come up quite a lot.
So is it possible to put two sticks together, say non-Indigenous and Indigenous? Is it too easy to just use that image and say, oh, well, that's a lovely image, just stick them together? And
I think that's I mean, in one sense it's easy to do that, just say, well, stick them all together. But because one group is more dominant than the other, they'll expect this one stick will be really only one type instead of a different type. It's more like...
so how does God do it? Because the action of putting those sticks together is by God and in God's hand, not just by our hands. So putting those sticks together is not just a political thing, is it something done in a different way, is it?
It is, that's right. And like for instance, and it's not... It is a nation-building exercise. It's a bit easier to said in the beginning about Korea because they are one people. But in a place like in Australia, it is nation-building. We find common understandings and common direction, and there are things that we do understand, like for instance, land itself, the importance of land and the environment and things around us. But it's not, uniformly that we still have to be European.
So how can you do that within a one nation state like Australia? How do you allow for that diversity to be reflected in law and culture and kind of social practice, language and so on? How do we do that to have diversity, yet have that unity?
Well, I think you've got to respect each other's uniqueness, be able to allow them to exercise within reason, from the point of view of, then we've got to have at least some sort of common understanding of who we are as a people, and use that as a starting point, but allow people then to still reflect who they are. Because as we know, or should know from our own experience of stolen generation, again, that if you're not in touch with who you are, then you've got serious psychological problems that need to be dealt with as well. And I think we do have that, because if you scratch the surface of Australia every now and then, you can sense, the racism that's still alive here. Like, for instance, the Cronulla riots, or the events that took place in Camden just recently about over the school. That there are problems here, but we've got to have a common understanding. And I don't think we've really come to that. It's not all VB beer and you'll be right, mate, and all that. I think there's got to be something a bit more deeper than that. And I think that lies back on, again, going back to the founding of this country and about Australia, is that at the basis of this is, again, the idea of, first of all, original sin. The land was founded on a lie, but also about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that should be part of that grounding in this. So there were some things, basic things that were taking place here which were important.
Yeah, and spiritually, I think what was interesting is that we had named in the Mabo decision that terra nullius was a lie politically and so on about the land. But one of the things that I think, I'm not sure the church has even come to terms with, is the fact that spiritually speaking, this land was not terra nullius either, that the Spirit of God was in this place, and we have yet really to reconnect, especially those who come from elsewhere, but maybe even some Indigenous people have been separated from their place and so on, with that spirit, and to tell the story of the land, which doesn't mean denying the riches that come from elsewhere, including not least the Christian tradition, but this needs to be informed by what's actually there.
A deep understanding, and I think that Christian churches especially have a role in bringing us together. Like the story of the Bible is a story of a people's journey. It may not be exactly the same, but there are some deep underlying meanings that we can all draw from. This is their experience. Oh yeah, we know about that. Our experience is pretty much the same. That we can draw on to help give this basic understanding of who we are as a people. And churches should be leading in this area.
I mean, one of the interesting things, isn't it, been said by people, is that, like Ray Minick, I remember saying that the Bible, one of his teachers said, the Bible is a tribal book. And it is, but especially when you look at it from the Old Testament. So passages like that come from a very tribal society, and that maybe actually it is of Indigenous people, especially those who still have more tribal existence, who probably can understand some of that better in a way, what's actually been saying in passages like that. What does the stick? I mean, there's a whole tradition of message sticks. What does that mean?
Well, I don't know whether you can put it in the same. It's a message stick. First of all, is a form of writing or a message that is set out, usually to inform people of coming events, or is a rite of passage through someone else's country, just saying that they have authority to be heading somewhere to do something. But I don't know whether you can use that in the sense of bringing that back to about the...
I wasn't saying that there's two message sticks being compiled here. I was just saying, how does that what is when you start using language of sticks, what does that mean? And I suppose it means different people, doesn't it, from Japan.
Well, I think more there are two different sticks here that we're trying to bring together. You may want to even use the symbol of the clapsticks themselves, hardwood and the softwood, and playing them together gives you a tune.